Welcome to Let's Treasure That, everybody. I'm Gilles. Today we've got a really interesting project, and this might take more than one episode, but we'll see. What I've got here is a protractor right there from Browne Sharpe. It's a really oldie, doesn't have a magnifying glass or anything, and it's missing the really minute adjustment knob and gear. So the project here is to make those. Let's get going. As you'll see here, these gears are incredibly small. I mean, incredibly small. So let's look at it under the microscope, and I'll point your attention to here. All right, now that gives you a good idea of just how small the teeth are on this gear. So it's going to be really interesting and challenging. So let's look at some of the information that we need to take into account here. The pressure angle of the gears teeth is 14.5. There are 16 teeth right here. The gear has a diameter of 180 thousandths of an inch, or 77 millimeters. Now, of course, we're going to have to make a cutting tool to make this gear. So that's going to be interesting. I'll probably have to file that under the microscope just to get it to the right size. And then I'm going, once all that is done, I've got the little knob to fit the gear, and we've got that all figured out. I'm going to make a magnifying glass because my old eyes can't quite see the little lines. So I've got an old magnifying glass here. So I'm going to shine that up, make sure it's got the least amount of flaws as possible, and cut it to the appropriate dimensions. And the idea is to make something like the Meditoya here, so that I can see what I'm doing. So let's get started. Okay, so I've got a drill rod here, or tool steel, shall you call it. It's a 1-tool steel, and I'm going to take a chunk of it 3.5 inches long and turn it down to 1/2 inch. Nice easy size to work with on the mill. And then, because later on I'll probably convert that to something else, of course, right? So might as well keep it at 1/2 inch. All right, so I've got this thing dialed in within a couple of thousandths of an inch. That's more than adequate. So let's turn it down from 11/16 to 1/2 inch. That's 3/16 of an inch, or 187 thousandths of an inch. Okay, so I've lost all the footage of turning down this piece of 2-tool steel, or 1-tool steel. And so right now it's at 1/2 inch diameter, which is what I wanted, which is gonna go in the jaws of my milling machine. So I'm going to turn down this side, and I'm going to bring it even smaller, because that's where I'm going to put the cutting edge on for the gear cutting. So here we are. I've turned down that piece. I've cut it to length 3.5 inches. And now that's going to become a tool. So I'm going to cut this out about 1/2 inch and bring it down to, say, about 3/8 of an inch, and that should do the trick. Okay, so this is where things start getting interesting. Essentially, we've got to take off some material from the end and a little more from the inner side of this part, and bring it down so that we won't have too much work to do with filing. Go across and right back down to 125. Okay, just came back from the microscope where I figured out that I need to take out another 13 thousandths because I need to take out essentially, let me see here, 0.5 millimeters. There's 10. And there's 13. Before I get really excited, I'm going to have a quick look with my magnifying glass. Ah, that looks a lot better. Yeah. Much better. Just at the end here, as it curls up, this soft material. All right. Ah, looks a lot better. This is the part of the video that gets a little bit iffy. Okay, so there's the outer part of that circle, which will be the cutting implement. And then I've scribed a line at 28.5 thousandths of an inch, which is exactly the depth that the gears have to be. That's not a lot. That's like 0.65 millimeters. So of course, the gear cutter, which this is going to be, needs to have teeth that are deeper than that. But just really interesting that now I'm at the point that I need to make these teeth. Since there's not a lot of depth, I'm thinking I'd like to try to do it with a file. Okay, so what I've got here is I've put the part in my dividing head, and I've got it on my bench. And I've got my magnifying glass all set up here. So what I'm going to do is see if I can file things up. Now, got to remember this is going to turn like this. So I've got to make sure that the cutting angle is appropriate. Okay, so far, this is what I've got. So the hole is on the right is the tooth, and on the left is basically the relief for the tooth that's going to be preceding it. So let's make a couple more and see what happens. Well, that's starting to look like a cutter of some sort. So yeah, I think I'm going to go all the way around and see what happens. Okay, so basically I go like this, line it up, start to cut straight, and then angle it so that I can get that relief. All right, let's try to cut another one. Let's see that here. Make a little groove. angle the file and dig in at an angle. And that's how you get the cutters. Kind of cool. This is looking at them from the front and the side here, sorry. Very small. So what you're looking at here is about 40 thousandths of an inch. And here's the result. Now, I need to see if this is going to cut. Before I do that, it's going to cut. It's really sharp. It is not going to be a friendly wheel. Now, is it going to give me the proper diametral pitch? I don't think so, but if I'm close, that should be good enough. So, now what I really should do is harden this tip. And since this is tool steel, I'm simply gonna use a blowtorch or something like that. Bring it red hot and quench it. Let's do it. So I'm just gonna get this nice and red hot. And then this is 01 tool steel, so you have to quench it in oil. It's always recommended that you heat up 01 tool steel slowly. I'd do it in the oven, but for this project, I don't think that's necessary. All I'm going to cut is some brass. You see the tips already starting to get red at times here, so I'm going to take my time. Color is changing, as you can tell. We're starting to get to the yellow, and it's darkening quickly. So, in my torch, we are in blue already. It won't take long now. It's going to get to red. Here we are, about to turn purple. If you're wondering, this is MPS gas I'm using. It's a little hotter than propane. I like using this. There we go. All right, that's good. And that should do the trick. So now I need to measure the depth from the bottom here to the top of this gear ring. So here I've got a Starrett depth gauge. And if I'm not mistaken, it should be around 50 thousandths. Oh, pardon me. Okay, so here we are. And I'm touching the bottom. Make sure I'm touching the correct bottom. All right, lock that in. And that is, about 49 thousandths. So that's how thick we need to do this. I've had to think through what I'm going to do here. And I think the most effective method before I start putting a hole in the middle and any of that stuff would probably be to cut this and go to the mill, set up the dividing head to cut 16 teeth. And of course, I'm going to have a support here. which means probably need to go to the lathe first and poke a very tiny 60-degree hole in there. So the lathe is next. Okay, our piece of brass is at the lathe, and the whole idea is to face this off and then make a center hole in there. And I've got a number 1 center drill, which is extremely small. So let's get that done right now. Okay, it looks good. Okay, so we're ready. This is very, very small, as you can tell. So I don't need a big hole, I just need something in order for my tailstock on my dividing head to hold the piece. A little bit more. And that should do the trick. Okay, so the first thing I need to do before I even get started cutting stuff here is establish a 0 at the cutting tip. So I'm going to start the machine, bring it in nice and slow, and I'm going to be using a digital readout to ensure accuracy. So I need to get started with that aspect of it first, and then proceed further. There it is. So that's the y-axis. We'll set that to 0. Okay, so the full depth of cut has to be 25 thousandths of an inch. I'm going to take a depth of cut of 10 thousandths. Log that in. And I'm going to manually move the cutting implement. So far, it doesn't look bad. Go as far as this thing will take me. Okay, and that's it. I'm going to go back. And I'm going to take another cut of 10 thousandths. We got to go a full depth of 25. So we're 20.6 thousandths now. Unlock the y-axis, and we'll take the last 5 now. There we go. Okay, so now what we need to do is withdraw, turn the dividing head, and get set up for the following one. Alright, so that's done. Now, we need to go, I started at 0 degrees, not that that matters. We need to go 2, that's 1, 2, and 10 holes. Okay, there it is here. We'll lock lock the spindle, and I guess we should be ready to go in for the next one. So let's get trucking. We'll do the same thing, 10 thousandths. The first cut, here we are. Lock that up and move forward. Okay, unlock. Take another 10. Right there. I know you can't see the arrow, so you're going to have to trust me on that one. Kind of curious to see what it'll look like. Okay, take the last 5. There's 5. Okay. Actually need 2 of the 16 gears. Stop the machine. Withdraw, and I'll bring you back to see if we actually reach gear 16. Okay, if I've put theory into correct practice, this should be the last gear. So let's go for it. No pressure. And that, my friends, should be it. So let's just take this thing off here. I'll bring you in with my phone and see if we can have a better shot of this. All right, and this is what it looks like up close and personal. So now it's time to take it out of there before I do anything else. I'm gonna actually try it out. Okay, so that is all done, and I had to put the part in the lathe and sand it down, because when you cut this material, this brass, it of course squeezes upwards. So, you know, I had to take it down about 30 thousandths of an inch just to cut the edges off in order for it to fit in here, as you just saw in the microscope shots. The other thing that's important is that the knob for adjusting all this has to enter from the back of this protractor, and if I could do this with my left hand, that'd be great. See, there you go, fits in nicely. So now the remaining details have to be done. I've got to make a knob or two for this thing in case I lose one. And so that'll be the next part. Making the knob, I think I will simply add a little shaft at the end of it and Loctite that onto this portion here.